I'm Martha Hilley, and I am a professor emeritus.
Well, welcome. And you're a true legend here at UT Austin. It is absolutely incredible. I was looking over your bio and all the awards you've won, and my wife teaches piano here, so I've known about you for a long time because my wife, she taught with your books when she was a TA in
Yeah.
Arizona,
Uh-huh.
and then she bumped into you a couple times at a conference, and it was always like, oh my gosh, I met Martha Hilley. I mean, you were like a celebrity in our house. So it was so cool to finally meet you and then to talk to you. You have just such an interesting life story, so much different than I think a lot of people would think about with piano. And it's just so neat. So and you're like a true Texas person. Most of these
Oh,
people
yeah.
are transplants,
Oh,
right?
no.
Most
No.
people are like me. They're not from Texas. We've kind of come here, but you're a true Texan. And
Yeah.
So let's just start kind of from the beginning. So like how'd you first get playing with piano? I know it's multi-generational, right?
Oh,
But
it is. It is. Well, my grandmother played by ear. She had no idea what she was doing, but she played beautifully. And I mean, even through when I was in college, I used to beg her, Gran, please tell me what you're doing. She said, honey, I have no idea. God puts it in my head, and my fingers put it on the piano.
okay, were these like her own compositions, or would she like hear
She
stuff?
did both.
Okay.
She did both. You know, usually if you could sing 3 or 4 notes of some song, she's off and running.
Okay.
But and she played a lot of classical music by ear.
Wow.
Right.
So she would have listened to it on like a record and just
Oh,
over and
yeah.
over, and then
Oh,
just
yeah.
started picking it up.
Yeah, I have her record collection. That's just amazing. Long playing records, when records were records,
Yeah. Yeah.
real. So New York Philharmonic, lots of operas. We used to, my brother and I would spend a lot of time with her in the summers. And we had 2 cousins that would come to town. And the 4 of us would, Gran would say to us, okay, make up your story for your opera. And then I'll make up your music. And we made costumes and all of this stuff and everything.
Oh wow.
And so we would tell her about our story, and then she would just improvise things for us to do.
Wow.
And we danced and we sang, and she'd just follow what we were singing. And
That's like the best memories ever.
yeah, yeah.
And no formal training.
No.
Wow.
She beautiful voice. She was a soprano and beautiful voice. But that's where everything started, was with her. And my mom went to college at TCU and at UT, both,
Oh wow.
as a pianist.
Okay.
And when she was pregnant with my brother, she had uremic poisoning and had a lot of problems, physical problems. So they dropped out of school here.
Oh wow.
So she did 2 years at TCU and 1 year here.
Okay.
Back when Doty was dean. Right.
In the old school. Right.
In the old school. Her the little field house across
Yeah.
campus. Her piano lessons were in the basement of Littlefield House.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So we were really lucky, and my grandmother had 2 sisters who lived in our little hometown. And at Christmas time, everybody would go to my grandmother's house.
And this is in North Texas, right?
No,
Or
this
like
is in the South Plains.
South Plains. Okay.
Spur, Texas.
Okay.
Just south of Lubbock.
Okay.
Yeah. And at the holiday time, or if they were there in the summer, we would go to my Aunt Helen's house. And there was this wonderful, we called it a dumpy, but here they would call it a cushion that you put your feet up on when you're sitting down.
Oh, like a footstool?
Yeah, a footstool.
Okay.
But it was round, it was hollow on the inside. You could store things in it.
Okay.
It had leather on the outside of it. I now have it.
Okay.
In my house, yes. When you come to the Christmas party this
Okay,
year,
yeah.
yes, you'll see it. Anyway, we would go there, and you had to sing, you had to stand on the dumpy and sing The Bear Went Over the Mountain to kind of pass your entry into their lives.
Wow.
But we would just sing and they'd play music and it was fantastic. So music was a big part of my life.
Yeah, that's incredible.
It really was. It
Yeah.
really was. And I started my lessons with my mom, but I only lasted, I think it tops would have been 6 months because I wouldn't practice for her.
Yeah.
You know, I'd tell her that I'd do the dishes or I'd make the beds or I'd do something if I didn't have to practice so much.
You can't. It's a hard dynamic. Like our kid, that's why our daughter has a piano teacher.
Yeah.
You just can't. You can't be a mom and a piano teacher.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard.
So,
So she shipped me off to her teacher.
okay.
Yeah. And so that's who I stayed with. But when I became a freshman in high school, I went into my mom and I said, I'm going to stop piano. And she said, why would you do that? And I said, because I'm in high school. And boys are very interesting. And she said, you're going to be sorry. And I said, I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
And she was right. I was sorry. I did drop out of piano. I still played at church on the at the Methodist church and played piano with the organist. And the organist, you'll love this. The organist was this older woman. She was a wonderful person, but she hated sharps.
Okay.
She did not want to play in sharps. So if there was a hymn that was in D major, we played it in D flat. And to this day, I am more comfortable playing in flat keys
Wow.
than sharp keys, and I blame her for that. Because
So how would that work? So she would play the organ and you'd play the piano at the same time?
Uh-huh,
Or would, okay.
uh-huh. Yeah.
Is that common in churches?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, it is where I grew up.
Yeah.
There was always a piano and an organ.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So and so at this point, like you're probably not thinking you want to become a piano teacher if you're quitting piano in freshman year.
No, my passion was either math or physics.
Okay.
And, you go to a career day. I don't know if you did that where you were in high
yeah.
school, but
Oh,
you would go, when you're a junior in high school, you would go to career day to some university to kind of look at what they did, see what their scholarships were like. And so I went to career day with my best friend in high school. His name's Jimmy Jones, and he studied piano with my mom. And he was going to audition for a music major. I was going to see if I could get scholarships for either math or physics.
Okay.
Or both.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was a fantastic day, and I did get offers from both math and physics. So I was on the top of the world. I thought this was the greatest thing in the world. So I met Jimmy for lunch, and before I could say a word, he said, "You're not going to believe it." And I said, "Was it bad?" And he said, "No, they're giving me a free ride. Everything. Dorm, foods, books, tax, fees, tuition, all 4 years."
Wow.
And I said, "Seriously? For piano?" And he said, "Yeah, how'd you do?" And I said, "Well, I got scholarships from both physics and math, but they're not doing my fees and
2 minutes ago I thought I was great.
Yeah, I thought it was great. And there's no promise for any number of years, you just,
Yeah.
And he said, "You should have stayed in piano." Well, so it didn't take us long. We were like 45 miles from this school that we went to. And we didn't talk about it that much. And I walked in the house and said to my mother, "I'm going to be a music major." And she said, "On what?" And I said, "The piano." She said, "Baby, you haven't touched the piano except at church in 3 years." And I said, "I can do it." And I talked to them, and they said, "I can audition next fall for the following fall,
Okay.
after I graduate."
Yeah.
And she said, "Well, you've got the summer, I guess." And she said, yeah. And she said, I'm here if you need help. I said, okay. And I nearly killed myself. I mean, I really hit it, because she was teaching, so I didn't always have a piano
Okay, yeah.
to practice on anytime I wanted to.
So would you wait till she was done and then just...
No, I went to the church.
Okay.
Since I played for church, I had a key to the church.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I could go to the church and work there.
Wow. So your mom must have been quite a teacher, though, if she's teaching people and they're getting full ride scholarships.
Oh, she was
to
fantastic.
College. So what was she like as a teacher?
Well, she was, first of all, my mom was a wonderful pianist. She really was. And her teacher had been accepted by Juilliard and was supposed to go to Juilliard for college. And she met this cowboy. And that was it. His name was Cap McNeil. And that's a good cowboy name, Cap. Cap. That's what they named him, Cap. His family had lots of money, and they had this beautiful ranch about 10 miles away from Spur, from my hometown.
Okay.
And Maud would, work there. She even had an organ and a piano. Okay. She loved the organ. She loved playing the organ. Anyway, when she met this cowboy, she fell in love. And that was the end of Juilliard. And I often ask her, was she sorry? And she said, no, never.
Okay.
And she lived on that ranch until she had to go into a home for older people.
So it was like a happily ever after.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really was. It really was. But she was a fantastic pianist. Anyway, Mother was a fantastic pianist. But Mother's largest demand from her students was not that they learned to be the best pianist in the world, but they learned to love music. And that was her goal for every child she taught. And there was a time when she had almost 100 students.
That's
a week.
That's unbelievable. How?
Well, she started teaching at 6:30 in the morning, for one thing.
But how?
And then she went to a little town that was about 35 miles away from us. And by now we lived in East Texas. We moved to East Texas. And this little town, Cold Spring, was in the middle of nowhere. And the superintendent of the school said if Mother would come there, she could spend Monday night and Tuesday night with them, and she could teach on Tuesday and Wednesday, and then go home. And he put a studio in the school for her.
So kids would come out of class and play?
Well, kids would come out of library time and study hall and athletics and stuff like that. She didn't pull them out of class. But she did.
Did the school pay for it, or did the parents, it was
no,
an extra?
No, the parents paid for it.
Wow.
Yeah.
But 100 students? That's...
Yeah. Well, she had so many students there at the school. And then she still taught starting at 6:30 in the morning on Monday mornings and on Thursday mornings and Friday mornings.
At the house?
At the house. And then on Saturday, she didn't start until 9.
Oh, that was her sleep-in day. Yeah.
Sleep-in day, yeah. Well, Mother always felt like, sleep was a waste of time.
Yeah,
there would come a time in her life
when
she would sleep forever. So she used to say, it's a waste of time. But, and she taught until about 7:30 at night.
Wow.
Starting with the first child that came out of school, at 2:30 in the afternoon. Back then, they came out at 2:30 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Because everybody started at 8.
Yeah. Now they start at 7:20 and they go till 3:30.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Well, anyway, but and in Cold Spring, Mother also did theater shows.
Okay.
Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm was my favorite one. And the kids just loved it. And she would play the piano for them, do all the music, and they would do the singing and the dancing and all this stuff. And it was great.
How did she not burn out, though? I mean, 100 students.
Oh, she loved it.
I know, but anybody else would have burnt out. And that yet she still cared, she still wanted to instill the love of music. And How, like, what do you think? Was it just her personality or?
Oh yeah, it's a shame you didn't meet her.
Yeah, but I mean, but like, have you ever met anyone else who's had 100 students?
Oh yeah,
Really?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, think about it this way. Back then, they taught 30-minute lessons, 45-minute lessons, and hour lessons. So they had 3 levels. And in a 30-minute lesson, I mean, you have to be really, you know exactly what you want to do, or you just don't get anything done.
Yeah.
You know, I never did understand how she taught 30-minute lessons.
Yeah.
But she did.
But even if every single lesson was 30 minutes, that's still 50 hours a week of solid teaching.
Oh, yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
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 So, and what would you do to instill that love of music with her students? Like, what did you pick up anything of how she did it?
Well, she taught music. Let me say that first. She taught music. She chose the piano as the vehicle to teach the music. So they had theory classes, they had opera classes, they had rhythm band ensembles, they had...
Wait, she organized this?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Wow, okay.
And they paid extra for these things, too. You know.
Yeah.
So, and in the rhythm band, she usually had 20, 25 kids in the rhythm band.
So rhythm band would be like bongos or like what?
All kinds of instruments. I still
Okay.
have boxes full of these things. And, I mean, they're things that you shake, and they're drumsticks, and they're jingle bells, and they're all kinds of things.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they were meeting up with her like 3 times a week.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's
Yeah.
that's
And
amazing.
she had a music room built onto the back of the house.
Yeah.
You know. So.
And she still had time to teach you in high school?
Oh no, she didn't teach me yet. Remember? She
Oh yeah,
didn't
no,
teach
but I
me.
mean, once you decided to get serious, that last summer.
No, actually, she just left me alone.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you were able to do it on your own?
Yeah, I asked her some questions about things and I'd play for her and say, "What do you think about this?" And she'd say, "I think it would be better if you tried this." And she'd play something, and I'd say, "I just had your fingers."
Yeah.
She was really great. Yeah, she was great.
That's 50 hours a week for,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
She hit her 10,000 hours many times over.
She did. And, you know, everybody in town loved her, and she had a waiting list always. And
That's amazing.
yeah,
That's amazing.
yeah.
So back to you. So now you're
So back to me.
Summer of between junior and senior year,
Yeah.
and you
Junior
just
and
decided to
senior
go
year.
for it.
Yeah, and I graduated in 1962 from high school. And when I took my audition the next fall, I got the scholarship.
The full ride.
They didn't pay for my dorm
Mm-hmm.
and food, but they paid for my tuition and fees and stuff like that. So, which was good,
Yeah.
you know, because my folks couldn't afford for me to go to college, and I knew that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in 1962, was it common for women to go into like physics? Was that
No, not at all.
So I mean, that's kind of impressive that you got
Yeah.
scholarships
Yeah.
and just accepted.
Well,
into
see,
that.
what I planned on doing was I was going to go to college, and the first 2 years I was going to get rid of the government and Texas history and all physics and math and all
Yeah.
English and all that stuff.
The
and-
general ed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when I got to be a junior, I was going to switch to either math or physics.
Oh, you were going to work the system.
I was going to work the system. I was going to save money, work in the summers.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, and then I had my first theory class.
Okay. So when you went into college, you were still thinking you're still
Oh yeah,
going to be
I was
physics.
still.
Okay.
And I had decided that I was going to do math.
Okay.
Because I love math.
Okay.
And then I went
One
to
of the few music students that love math. Like usually, like the math department recruits for the music school.
Oh.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Well, you know, so much of it I didn't realize. So I went to my theory class, and it was fascinating. And I thought, this is math.
Yeah.
How about that? And I had an incredible teacher. And then I went to my first music history class. And my music history teacher was Harry Mallard. Now, you've probably heard the name Betty Mallard.
Sounds familiar.
She was on the piano faculty here.
Okay.
She was also on the piano faculty at Sam Houston State, where I went to school.
Okay.
And she met Harry there. They fell in love, got married, and Sam Houston fired her
Oh.
and said it was because of nepotism.
Oh, okay.
Well, that's not true. Because
Because they both had jobs, right?
Well, the wife of the chairman of the department also taught
Oh, yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Luckily here at Butler, we don't care if
Yeah,
the two
I told Betty she should sue them. And she said, no. I'm just not going to do that. I'm just going to leave at the end of the year. And she said, I can get some part-time teaching at UT.
Okay.
And so she came back here and was here. I mean, she retired maybe 8 years ago.
Wow.
10 years
So
ago,
you were
maybe.
like it overlapped.
Oh, Betty
Wow.
was and she was on the faculty when I was in the master's program at Sam Houston.
Wow.
Yeah.
Small world.
Yeah, small world. Harry was my history teacher. Do you know the name Michael Tusa from here?
I don't.
Okay, Michael Tusa was a musicologist. Michael knows everything. Michael and Harry are so much alike because they have this subtle humor about them. But if you're paying attention, I could remember going to Harry's music history class, and this went all the way through. I took a Renaissance class for him when I was in the master's program. Now, none of the pianists signed up for Renaissance music. Why would you study Renaissance music? You're a pianist. They didn't have pianists back in Renaissance time,
Yeah.
you know.
It was all harpsichord and organ back then?
Well, it was, yeah,
Yeah.
even pre that.
Oh, pre that. Okay.
Yeah. But Harry was fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And I would sit there and just be laughing out loud at something he said, and the rest of the students are looking at me like, what is your problem?
So you had two kind of very influential professors that really...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And they made, I mean, history was something I loved. And theory was something that, you know, you can depend on theory. There's so many things about music that are kind of iffy.
Yeah.
You know?
Subjective, yeah.
And there are a lot of rules.
Yeah.
And they're theory rules, too. But if you approach theory from its logic, it's the one thing in music that you can really depend on.
Yeah.
I mean, it's true, it's there.
Yeah.
And my adults that are studying with me now, you know, they're 60 and older, they're fascinated by theory.
Okay. Right, because you're still fascinated by it.
Well, I'll always be fascinated by theory, you know, and they ask me questions and then they listen to my answers. That's unique and wonderful. But anyway, so those two guys, really, I decided, I think I'll stay here.
And then, so at that point, were you thinking, I'll do this and become a piano teacher like my mom when you were like in undergrad?
Well, I didn't know exactly what I would do. So I decided that I'd do a master's, definitely do a master's program. Well, I got a TA, a teaching assistantship.
Mm-hmm.
And my piano teacher said to me, okay, you got this assistantship. You're going to be teaching piano. And you're going to be teaching both one-to-one piano and group piano. And I said, what's group piano? And he said, you'll be great at it. You got the right personality. And he said, and these are the keys to the room. And by the way, in the bench for the teacher piano, I saw a manual of some kind. So take a look at that. That was my training.
Okay.
He told me where the manual was.
So were these like all acoustic, upright pianos?
Oh, no. These were Wurlitzer pianos.
Okay.
And Wurlitzer was, at that time, the leading manufacturer of electronic pianos. They weren't digital. They were electronic pianos. And they only had 66 keys on them. You know, It's a smaller keyboard. But I had 24 of them in that room.
Oh, wow. It's a big class.
It's a huge class.
Yeah.
For somebody who had never done anything.
Yeah. Because usually class piano, it's like 15 or under.
Yeah. Right. So I decided, since nobody had trained me, and I looked at this manual, and they suggested this book, and it was a book that you could use to teach from. And I looked at this, and it gave me some ideas, and I decided, You know what I'll do? I'll talk to the students about it. So at the first class, I said to them, a lot of you wonder why you're in piano class, because you want to be, practicing your violin and your oboe and your percussion and all of those things. And I understand that. But what I want to do is not turn you into a pianist. I want to teach you how to use the piano as a tool that will help you as a musician.
Wow, that's pretty wise for a first-year master's student
Well,
to be able to say that to.
but
a
I'd
class.
heard all these stories about how the students treated the people that taught group piano.
Okay.
They didn't want to be there.
Yeah.
They didn't know why somebody made them do this.
Mm-hmm.
Their teachers didn't want them to be there. Anyway, so I kept talking to them about the kinds of things that they would like to learn on the piano. And they were really pretty open with me. So I started putting a curriculum together based on what they said to me.
This is in your master's degree?
In my master's degree. And that ended up being my master's thesis.
Wow.
Instead of write about some dead German somewhere,
Yeah.
that nobody would be interested in, I decided I'll just write this curriculum and I'll do some research and see, because I was also teaching one-to-one students,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted to see if there was a difference in the progression of where they were in a group piano class that met 3 times a week
Mm-hmm.
for 50 minutes each time. So that was one plus,
Yeah.
was butts and seats.
So there's 24 of them.
Yeah, for more time.
Yeah.
And they had 24 of them, and I got them to listen to one another, and they would play for one another, and they would talk about something they'd done in the practice room that solved a problem that some student had. So I learned how to shut up
Yeah.
and let them do peer stuff,
Mhm. Yeah.
And then I had my students for 50 minutes a week, not even an hour less than my one-to-one students, only once a week. True, they had my undivided attention,
Mm-hmm.
but I couldn't do the things that I was doing with the classes because I talked to the theory teacher and I talked to Harry, my musicologist teacher,
Yeah.
and found out what the students were studying that particular week and what I could bring into the classroom,
Wow.
to
True interdisciplinary.
to reinforce what they were doing in
Yeah.
theory. Theory helps piano, piano helps theory.
Mm-hmm.
History talks about composers, and we would look at different composers and talk about, how people played back then and what influenced them. And sure, they learned birth and death dates in music history class, but they learned a lot more than that from Harry. But I would say things to him like, okay, so Mozart decided he'd go to London for Christmas. Who do you think he had dinner with? And they're saying, what? And I said, I'm saying, don't just memorize when Mozart was alive. Memorize who might have influenced him.
Yeah.
Or who he might have influenced. And listen to both of does their music complement one another? Or, learn that kind. Because these were real people.
Yeah.
And they were influenced by things. And they were influenced by art and architecture and, dance and all these things.
Oh, yeah.
So I had the time to bring that to my group piano class, but I didn't have the time to bring it to my one-to-one students.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't have that. My kids in piano class were making better grades in theory, better grades in music history.
Oh, wow.
They were just better all-around musicians.
What about just progress on the piano
Progress on the piano was much better
in the group?
in the group.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when did the light bulb go off that like this group piano thing is?
Well, as I started writing this thesis,
Mm-hmm.
and Harry was my second reader. Of course, I wasn't calling him Harry; I was calling him Dr. Mallard. But,
Yeah.
and when I took my first what I'd written in, Harry said, "Okay, I'll get it back to you by the end of the week." I said, "Okay." Well, he got it back to me, and it looked like he had bled all over it in red.
Yeah.
There were these things, but almost on every page, don't visit. He wrote, don't visit.
What does that mean?
Well, what he means is I write like I talk.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, this is a research project.
Yeah.
You need to sound like an academician.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm not an academician.
Yeah.
I'm a piano teacher.
Yeah.
And he said, well, we'll work on that. So he helped me with that. So I ended up with this thesis, and which was great. And finished my master's. In the meantime, when I was a junior in college, I got married.
Okay.
Yes. When I finished my master's, I got divorced. So here I was, and we had bills, as everybody does when they get married too young and all this stuff. And so
What did your husband do? Was he a student also?
he was a music major. I met him
Okay.
as he was a singer. But when he was a junior, he changed to theater.
Okay.
He was an incredible actor.
Yeah.
Incredible. And so I thought that was what he would do. Well, it turned out that's not what he would do, because his mom said she didn't like the influence these theater people had on him.
It's like, you tell me now
"What?"
after I went to college for it?
So he got a job we were in Huntsville, Texas, at Sam Houston State. And that's the home of the Walls, the prison system, the main prison in the state of Texas is there. And they had a choir
Okay.
of inmates, and they were looking for a director. And Chuck got the job.
Okay.
Right. Well, anyway, and he loved it, and he was happy. Fine. But
it wasn't the life you wanted.
well, Anyway, my sister-in-law got into it. My brother was in Vietnam, his second tour to Vietnam, and she came to live with Chuck and me while Eddie was in Vietnam, because he didn't want her to be alone.
Mm-hmm.
And so she came and lived with us. Well, we all got to the house at the same time one day, and she said, sit down on the couch, both of you. And so we sat down, and I said, is something wrong with Eddie? She said, no, Eddie's fine. And she said, do you know you don't love him? And then she looked at Chuck and said, and do you know you don't love her? You love her family, and she loves your family, but you don't love one another. And we said, you're crazy. And she said, just remember what I said to you. Well, we got to talking about it, and it was true. Neither one of us wanted to hurt the other one's family.
Okay.
By saying, this isn't going anywhere.
So it wasn't like a toxic marriage?
No. It just, it was a very, easy divorce.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm single. I got the dog and my share of the bills. He got the car.
Okay.
So I had to buy a car.
Sounds like a country song, right?
Yeah.
In Texas,
It'd be a
I
great
got the
one.
dog and the bills.
Yeah, right.
You got the car.
Anyway, I called a friend of mine in Dallas, Bill Schultz, and said, Schultz, Chuck and I divorced. He said, oh, man. I said, no. It was okay. He said, okay. You all didn't belong together. And I said, why didn't you say it to me? He said, it's none of my business.
Yeah, who's going to say that to somebody?
And I said, I'm calling to find out whether or not I can sleep on your couch until I find a job in Dallas, because there's nothing here in Huntsville. And he said, on one condition. And I said, what's that? He said, you got to bring Pooh with you. Well, Pooh, Winnie the Pooh, was my dog.
Okay.
Little poodle.
Okay.
And I said, you bet, he's coming with me. So I moved in with Schultz, slept on his couch, and 2 weeks later found a job. Now, the job that I found was as a cocktail waitress.
Okay.
And this was 1968, almost 69. And at that time in Dallas, Texas, you couldn't walk in a bar and buy a drink. There was no liquor with a drink.
Really?
You had to go south of the Trinity River.
Okay. It was like a prohibition almost?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
There were certain parts that could sell liquor.
Okay.
And certain that could. But the whole city of Dallas could not.
Oh, wow.
So all the hotels had put these clubs in their hotels.
Like a speakeasy?
Well,
Kind of.
I mean, they were very nice. No, they were very nice.
Okay.
And what happened was if you were somebody that checked into the hotel, you were automatically a member of the club.
Okay.
Because you were staying at the hotel. If you lived in Dallas and you brought them an unopened bottle of liquor, they would put it in a little locker that was just the size of the bottle, put your name on it, and you were now a member. You paid dues, nominal. They weren't that much. And so they had all these townspeople come in to their bars. 5 o'clock was like, somebody let school out. All of a sudden, all these people. Well, and I got a job as a cocktail waitress in the really fine club that was on top of the hotel. It was called the Top of the Castle. And the hotel was the Royal Coach Inn on Northwest Highway in Dallas. I'll never forget it. And I was in the bar as a cocktail waitress. We did the whole bit, the ruffle shirt, the black vest, the short skirt, the fishnet hose, and 3-inch heels.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. The whole bit.
Different world than the piano.
Oh, yeah. A little different from piano. But you know what I found out, Nathan, was I was good at this. And I enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
And I made buckets of money.
Oh, yeah.
The tips were phenomenal. Because, and here at the end of the 60s, there was an automatic 15% gratuity, which was unheard of.
Okay.
I mean.
So every drink you're automatically getting 15 and then whatever.
Yeah. Well, but they paid us $1.50 an hour.
Yeah.
That was our real money.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we turned into, as the money that we made. That and the gratuity on the check. But, as you got to know people and you knew their name and you knew what they drank, and by the time they got from the elevator to their table and you knew where they sat, you had their drink there on the table waiting on them. And they loved that. And you called them by name. And there'd be a little $20 bill under the check or something like that. And in that first year, I paid off everything I owed.
Wow.
From college. Everything. Which was unheard of.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really was.
That's amazing.
Now, one of my regulars came in one day and said, Martha, I've got these friends from Joplin, Missouri. They're brothers. And they just moved to Dallas because they're gonna buy Dairy Queens.
Okay.
Franchise rights to Dairy Queens. And they've set up their office. It's right in this building that's next to us. And they're looking for a receptionist. And I told them about you. Because I knew you were looking for a daytime job. So that you could, live a little better.
Mm-hmm.
Work in the day, work at night,
Yeah.
have Saturday and Sunday daytime off.
Yeah. You have your mother's genetics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. Anyway, so I met these 3 brothers. Bill, Ed, and Jack. Jack was the oldest. He was the entrepreneur. I mean, he was you name it. Ed was the middle. He was the accountant.
Okay.
Bill was the baby of the family, and he was the lawyer.
Okay.
So they had it all covered.
Yeah.
And they hired me. And I loved it. And very quickly they decided Dairy Queen just was not for them because they could do better. And they had met this guy in New York who owned TGI Fridays.
Okay. Yeah.
And he was going to sell half interest in that.
Wow.
For franchises. Were they interested?
Mm-hmm.
And they said, you bet. So they put the first Fridays in Dallas, Texas.
Oh, wow.
And then they met another guy who was doing Holiday Inns. And he said to them, did you realize that Holiday Inns is looking for somebody to take over the franchise rights of the inns in Mexico?
In all of Mexico?
In all of Mexico. Not the ones that are there now,
Oh, okay.
but the ones that are to come.
Yeah.
And you can probably buy some of the franchises that are already opened. Well, they became Holiday Inns of Mexico.
Wow.
And that was the main thing. And they had TGI Fridays.
True wheeler dealers.
Oh,
Yeah.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable amounts of money that went, you know.
Yeah.
And I learned so much from them because they put me in sales also and got another receptionist. But my first year there, I was sitting there one day and I thought.
As a receptionist?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I thought, what are you doing with your life? You're toting drinks and answering phones. And think of all those years you spent with piano. And then I got to thinking, I wonder if Wurlitzer Corporation would be interested in seeing my master's thesis. Because it was all about the benefits of group piano.
Yeah.
And it had this little curriculum in it and, you know, all this stuff and everything. And
did it look like a book, like were there little examples of?
Yeah. But very, you know, we also used other things that were in the music library where we could check things out.
Yeah.
And at this time, there were no computers. There were no cell phones. There was nothing to find. I had no idea where Wurlitzer Corporation was. No idea. But I had, you know, that teacher's manual that my teacher gave me or said, this is how you'll learn how to do this.
Oh, yeah.
I still had it.
So
and
you flipped to the back?
On the back of it, Wurlitzer Corporation was in DeKalb, Illinois, the home of Northern Illinois University.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to the city library and I found out because there was no phone number. I found out a phone number, went back to work, used Holiday Inns of Mexico's phone to call long distance to Wurlitzer Corporation. I still owe Jack for that phone call. Never did pay him for it. But I figured he had enough money to do that.
Yeah.
And
he
so
owns all the TGIFs, all the Dairy Queens, and all
these things. Anyway, so I went back to work and I called this number, and this very nice lady answered, and I told her that I would like to talk with the head of the music education area there and find out if he or she would be interested in reading this master's thesis that I wrote. And she said, well, our director of music education is out of town this whole week. But as soon as he gets back, I will ask him.
Mm-hmm.
In the meantime, do you have a copy of this thesis? And I said, I do. And she said, why don't you go ahead and send it to me? Because I have a feeling they're really into things like this.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, sure. So I also owe Holiday Inns for the package that I sent to Wurlitzer. Anyway, a couple of weeks later, the phone rings because this was my first year there, and I didn't have enough money to have a phone in my apartment.
Oh, wow.
So I gave him the Holiday Inns of Mexico. And so I picked it up and I said, good morning, Holiday Inns of Mexico. May I help you? And this man said, I need to speak with Martha Hilley. And I said, this is she. How may I help you? And he said, my name is Lou Hollingsworth, and I am the director of music education for Wurlitzer Corporation. And I dropped the phone on the floor. Well, by the time I got to it and
It didn't
picked
hang it up, did it?
No, and
Okay,
put it
but-
to my ear, he was laughing out loud. And I said, I am so sorry. He said, I guess you didn't expect to hear from me. And I said, not in a million years. And he said, well, everyone has read your thesis, everyone in the music education area. And we've decided you're our kind of people. And I said, your kind of people? And he said, we like the way you did things with your students. We like the fact that you took the trouble to see if there was a benefit to studying in group piano, because that's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, thank you very much. And he said, we have a symposium coming up in 2 weeks. And it's a 2-week symposium for everyone that works for Wurlitzer. They are invited. And we're meeting in Logan, Utah. And we would like for you to come as our guest.
Oh, wow.
And I said, your guest? And he said, yes. And I said, 2 weeks? He said, yes. And I said, I haven't even finished my first year at either one of my jobs. I don't think I can get 2 weeks off. And he said, would you like to give me the names of the people you work for in both of your jobs? And he said, what are your jobs? And I said, well, in the daytime, I'm a receptionist for the Pratt brothers. And at night, I'm a cocktail waitress at the top of the castle. And he said, you're our kind of people. Anyway, and I said, let me talk to the two bosses first. And he said, great. He said, call me back, call me collect.
Okay.
And I said, oh yeah, I will. Well, I went into Jack first and I told him about all of this. And he said, well, you're going, aren't you? And I said, you mean I could have 2 weeks off? And he said, Martha, think of all the years you spent going to college. You spent almost 8 years in college, and I did. 5 years on my undergraduate and 3 years on my master's. Anyway, he said, do you think I expected you to stay a receptionist for the rest of your life? And I said, I love my job. He said, and we love you. But you should do this.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, I'm going to go talk to George. Can I have it an hour off? And he said, of course, go on, talk to George. So I went next door to the hotel, talked to George, the manager of the club.
To the top of the castle.
At the top of the castle. And he said, oh, honey, yeah, go. So I went. And I met.
And Logan is it's like outside north of Salt Lake?
Yeah, it's in the mountains.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's wonderful. Oh, it's gorgeous. And I met all these salespeople and the administrators. I met the president of Wurlitzer Corporation, George Vigorito, and anyway.
What a break.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I used to tell this story I taught a class here called Career Goals and Management.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all about, so you have a master's, so you have a doctor, so what?
Mm-hmm.
Now what are you going to do? What have you learned about life? And I would tell them this story, and they're going, really? And I said, yeah, really. So I went to this thing, and it lasted 2 weeks, and at the end of 2 weeks, they offered me a part-time job with Wurlitzer Corporation to do workshops.
Okay.
For piano teachers. And I
would...
would...
private in their house, kind of?
No, at meetings. They would have these, and they usually had them at a music store of some kind.
But like the teachers that were going, these were like private.
The teachers,
yeah,
the teachers. And just like they do them nowadays.
Yeah.
And they told me that my teacher, my trainer, would be Larry Rast. And that they would fly him to Texas every once in a while on the weekend to work with me on some things. And I'm going, okay. Because I had seen Larry did, there were also 100 piano teachers at this symposium who had paid to come.
Mm-hmm.
And they were studying this 2-day thing with Larry Rast.
Okay.
And they had 48 Wurlitzer pianos in this room.
Wow.
So 48 of us could sit at a piano, and the others could sit around the room in chairs. And then after lunch, we'd switch.
Mm-hmm.
You know. Well, first day, there are these 100 teachers in there. Well, 101, because I was one of, you know,
Yeah.
I didn't have to pay. But he said, it's time to go to lunch. Don't take but an hour. I'm starting right at 1. And walked out the door. Well, we went to lunch. Everybody wanted to get back. They didn't want to miss a thing. And so we came back and we sat down and he said, take off your name tags. He said, take them off and put them face down. And I'm going, what are we doing? He proceeded to go around that room and tell you your first and last name and where you were from.
Wow. How?
That was my question.
Yeah. Because no one has that kind of memory.
He did not miss a one. He did not miss one of them. Well, at the end of the day, I went up to him and I said, okay, how'd you do that? And he said, how'd I do what? I said, the name thing. And he said, oh, so you like that? And I said, I've got to know how you did that. He said, it's easy. I said, it is not easy. And he said, okay. I get the registration list 3 weeks before the symposium. And I have copies of it all over my office at North Illinois University, all over my house. And every time I walk by it, I pick it up and I say out loud, Virginia Smith from Baltimore, Maryland. Put it down.
But how did he associate the visual?
Well, the thing is, he knew our names.
Oh, okay.
And where we were from before he ever saw us. So all he had to do was put our face with the name he already knew.
Oh, wow.
And that was easy.
Yeah. Well, it's 100 people. I'm not
It's
sure
100
easy.
people. But the thing is, and we should have known, now our names were huge on these things,
Yeah.
on the name tags. And when he would ask a question, he'd say, Nathan.
Okay, yeah.
And he's looking right at you.
Yeah.
You know, and he asked tons of questions. I adopted his theory. And my top number is 112.
So you go to a workshop.
Yeah.
And wow.
And the most I've done is 112. But I don't do it after the first morning. I do it after the first day.
Still though, that's amazing.
But I used this with my grad assistants and said, you got 2 weeks to know their names, where they're from, what their instrument is, and what their major is. And my grad assistants are saying, what? And I said, if I walk in there to observe you and you're saying, piano 6,
Yeah.
that's it. I'll pull you out of that classroom and teach the class myself, and you'll go to one-to-one teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, really? And I said, they're people. They're real people. They have names, and you have to show them that you're interested in them. I said, I know I can call my kids off without looking at anything by the end of the first class. But I've had their roster.
Yeah.
And I have the roster that shows their faces.
Yeah. Now we have an advantage. Yeah.
And I would get those to the students, to
Yeah.
the assistants, and they would have that, at least a week ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And, it makes all the difference in the world.
It does, yeah.
And the kids are sitting there thinking, how'd you do that?
Yeah.
And so I'll tell them how I did that. And I said, it's important. If you're going to be a teacher in public schools or in a college or something like that, or you're going to be in an orchestra, or you're going to be in any group, anything like that,
Yeah.
people love nothing more than to hear their name said.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure an orchestra.
Yeah, well.
Actually, I think they're not allowed to say your name in an orchestra. Isn't that like a union rule? The conductor's not allowed to say the person's
I don't
name?
know.
I think it is, yeah.
Really?
I
Why?
think it is. I think it's in this country. I think in Europe it's okay.
Why?
You can only talk to the whole section. I think, that's what I've heard. That's what I've heard.
What a shame. What a shame. All right.
Because sometimes it's not the whole section.
Yeah.
Right?
So, these things, and these are things that I mean, to this day, I owe Wurlitzer for my career.
Yeah.
I really do. Because what I found out after, I quit being a cocktail waitress and a receptionist and in sales and all this stuff, my teacher called me and said that one of the piano teachers there at Sam Houston, her mother was seriously ill and she was leaving. And they desperately needed somebody. And this person's name was Mary Lou, and she also taught a section of group piano.
Okay.
And he said, can you save us? Can you come? It's only for a year. And I said, yeah, I'll do it. And so I went.
Did you still keep your part-time job with Wurlitzer?
Yeah.
Doing this? Okay.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of young people that watch this podcast. For those people who might not know, Wurlitzer was like the Yamaha of their day.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
I mean, it was
they really were.
More than a household name.
Unbelievable.
It was like,
Yeah, unbelievable.
Maybe more name recognition than
Right.
Steinway at the time.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly. And after that first year, I had met this guy. What can I say to you? He lived in Little Rock, Arkansas. We got married. That lasted 6 months.
Oh.
I know. I just was not.
And you're such a people person.
I was
You're so
not
good
meant
with
to be
people.
married.
I know.
Anyway, so
6 months?
yeah,
What happened?
6 months. Who knows? Who knows? Yeah.
Okay.
It's just anyway.
I guess if you know within 6 months, it's better to than drag
So
it on
I moved
for 2
back to
years.
Dallas.
Yeah.
I got another job with the Pratt Brothers. I didn't do the waitress thing, and my teacher called me from Sam Houston and said, okay, we have a full-time job and it's group piano with a few one-to-one students.
Mm-hmm.
And we want you to interview for it. And I said, really? And he said, yeah. What I didn't know is when they had the job, he called Wurlitzer and said, to Lou Hollingsworth actually, said, we've got this job. We do not want a pianist who just needs a job. We want someone who is trained in group piano, who loves teaching group piano.
Which is hard to find.
And Lou said, I have one name for you. And Dr. Paul said, and who is that? And Lou said, Martha Hilley. You should know she's one of your graduates. And he said, really? And Lou said, yeah, she's who I would recommend.
Was he surprised?
I think he was shocked to hear that I had that kind of connection with Wurlitzer. And I didn't know they were doing this.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. The job that I got in New Jersey at Glassboro State University, same thing. They called Wurlitzer. My name was the only name they gave him. My job at the University of Minnesota in Minneapolis, same thing. So those were my first 3 college jobs were just handed to me.
And you the whole time you were still working at Wurlitzer part-time?
Yeah.
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 Wow.
Right.
Yeah. And how long did that Wurlitzer job, because are they still in business?
No.
No, okay.
No, but when Wurlitzer went out of business, I started with Roland. They
Okay.
recommended that I
I
talk
guess
to some of the
that Roland's like the
people.
monitor.
Yeah.
Yeah. So are you with them now?
No.
No. Okay.
No, because UT decided that it was not good because we had Roland Labs,
Okay.
and Roland continued to get the bid,
Okay.
but they had the best price.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay. Yeah.
so it was whoever had the lowest price.
Yeah.
When you're at a research university like this,
You think you could just recuse yourself from the bidding? Right.
I had nothing to do with
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So
No,
yeah.
but they said, you really no.
So
But
yeah. So now you're here.
yeah, so but what I said to these students in this career goals class is, I often wonder where in the Sam Hill I would be today if I had not just gone to the library in Dallas to get a phone number and call somebody I'd never heard of or never talked to see whether or not they would be interested in reading my master's thesis.
Yeah.
What if I hadn't done that? Where would I be? I have no idea.
Yeah. Might have been at the top of the castle though. Yeah. Right.
I might own the top of the castle.
Yeah. You might own some
Right.
Holiday Inns in Mexico, right?
So UT Austin was the first time I ever sent in an application for a job and came to interview.
Okay.
And had to teach. I didn't have to play, but I had to teach a class, a pedagogy class and a group piano class. And I had to talk with graduate students. And I also got to meet for a pizza party with some undergraduates.
Okay.
Here.
Yeah. And did you just want to come back to Texas from Minnesota?
Yeah, I did. I mean,
Yeah.
my whole family was here.
Yeah.
My dad was getting older.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was Butler like when it wasn't even Butler back then? It was just the School of
it
Music.
was
Yeah.
School of Music. And no, it was the Department of Music.
Department of Music. So what was it like back then when you first got here?
It was wonderful. It was wonderful. Bill Race and I didn't exactly meet eye to eye, but I think there were times when he resented the fact that I was called piano faculty.
Okay. Because you were group piano?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that stigma, I think it still sticks around.
Oh,
yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
Oh, you fight that your whole life.
Yeah. My wife, she fights that her whole life. Yeah.
Right. And I was on the faculty with Amanda Vick Lethco. Now, Amanda Vick Lethco is you want to talk about a legend?
Mm-hmm.
She was one of the authors for Alfred Publishing.
Oh,
The whole Alfred series, the method books,
yeah.
Amanda Vick.
Well, it's not that much different from you, though.
Well, but she was so fantastic. And she felt the same way about, how people respected her or didn't respect her or whatever. And all you have to do is just leave the building and you'll be fine.
Yeah. Nobody cares outside the building, but yeah. Well, it's hard, and my wife gets upset too because it's like people will look down sometimes upon teaching pedagogy, just period.
Yeah.
And even though they're all going to teach at some point. I mean, unless you're like at the top of the castle, right? If you're staying in music and you're a piano performance major, chances are you're going to teach at some point, right? The statistical chance of not teaching is very low. So,
but you just don't give up on it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I spent 49 years in higher ed.
Yeah. Yeah. And so let's talk about some of the years once you got here, because you didn't just stay in this building. You did a lot.
Oh, no. Well, I never stayed in the music building no matter where I was.
Okay.
Because I wanted to know what was happening on the campus. What does this college have to offer?
This is rare, though, in music. You don't have a lot of music faculty that do that.
Well, and I said to all my grad assistants, get yourself out of this building.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole world out there.
Yeah.
And I'd even give them names of professors like John Daly in the College of Communication.
Mm-hmm.
He taught a class called Interpersonal Communication.
Mm-hmm.
400 students in it. 400 students.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you every one of those 400 students felt like he was talking to them.
Okay.
I mean, he was just magic.
Yeah.
He spent so much time in Washington with different presidents, talking to them about how to communicate with Congress and how to communicate with this and how to communicate with that.
Yeah.
And, you know, and he's still traveling all over the world doing this, still teaching.
It's important. Yeah.
Yeah, it's important. But I would suggest, you know, John to them and say he doesn't mind if you want to just sit in the back of the room and just listen to what's going on. And I sat in on many of his classes and picked up, you know, habits and things, and, you know. Plus,
communications, it's important, you know.
Well, yeah. I wanted to know people outside of music.
Yeah.
I wanted to know people outside the arts.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we're wonderful in the arts, but we're not the only thing in life.
So,
you know, so the first thing that I did was get myself on university committees of some kind. And I loved that. I was chair of the faculty council twice. So I knew something. I learned an awful lot about faculty governance. I was on the faculty council a lot. I mean, you find out that people in other areas have problems with things.
Yeah.
You're not the only one.
Yeah.
You know, so you got tiles that are falling out of the ceiling and hitting people on the head as they're waiting for an elevator and things like. I mean, you find out you're not the only ones that are having problems.
Yeah.
You know, and who do you talk to and who do you get to know? And I mean, do you know your provost? Are you on a first name basis with your provost? Because the provost is kind of the champion of the faculty.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, not the president.
Yeah, the provost kind of runs the school day to day.
Yeah.
In a lot of sense. Yeah.
But it is nice to know the president.
Yeah,
also.
yeah.
And I have been on a first name basis with all of them since I've been here.
I mean, the president would come to your house for Christmas parties.
Yes, they do. And the provost, and yeah. And people that bag groceries at HEB, you know. My mother invited, I never knew who was coming to the party.
Yeah.
Never knew.
Because that's another thing you're kind of a legend for, your Christmas parties.
Yeah. Haven't had one since 2018, but this year, I'm working on it.
Yeah, COVID put a...
Yeah. I want to have that.
So how would you get back connected? In just by committees, or like how would you get on a first name basis with the provost or the president?
Well, through the committees, really.
Okay.
And through the council. Faculty council, because all of the deans back then, all of the deans of all the different colleges came to the faculty council meetings. Now they don't still do that, and I think that's bad.
Mm-hmm.
I think, you know, they have excuses, or they're busy, or they're whatever. Yeah, well, but the president and the provost are always there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how many? I've never been to one. How many people are there at those?
Over 100.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that's not that many.
That are members of
yeah.
it. And then you've got 16 deans and a president and a provost and staff and, you know.
Yeah.
So.
Did you ever consider, I know you served as assistant director of the school for a little while.
I was associate
director, yeah.
Associate director of the school. I was an assistant dean.
Assistant dean, okay.
For one semester.
Okay.
And that was when John Whitmore was dean. And I was dealing with faculty issues for him. But he took my group piano program away from me. He said, you know, you can't do everything you're doing.
Yeah.
And do this too. So I want you to tell me one of your grad assistants that you think can do her name is now Mary Tollefson, and she's been a professor at University of Wisconsin-La Crosse for a long time. Anyway, and she did the group piano. And that went a semester, and I went into John at the end of the semester and said, John, I just can't do this. He said, you're doing a great job. What are you talking about?
You seem like a natural for administration.
And I said, honey, you can't take my kids away from me. And he said, your kids? And I said, the undergrad. And he said, "You want to teach the undergrads that badly?" And I said, "They're my life.
Yeah.
And they are my kids. Well, my grad students are my kids too, but I mean, these undergraduates." And he said, "So you're saying you want out?" And I said, "I appreciate the fact that I got to do this. I learned a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want to go back to the classroom." He said, "Okay."
Do you ever wish you had gone into administration?
No. No, the students are, I mean, there would be no college. There would be no university if it
Yeah.
wasn't for the students.
Yeah.
Students and the staff.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. The higher up you get, the less they talk about students.
Yeah.
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 So, you're also a legend for, so obviously the Christmas parties, obviously here, but also like some of your stuff you've done for like MTNA, right? You were the president of MTNA.
Oh,
And,
yeah. Yeah.
I forget the big pedagogy thing in Chicago they have. Oh, what's it called?
NCKP?
NCPK, yeah, NCKP, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I got a Lifetime Achievement Award from them.
yes, talk about some of your work with those organizations.
Well, when I started doing the piano pedagogy thing, it was the National Conference on Piano Pedagogy, NCPP.
Okay.
And that was put together by Jim Like and Richard Chronister. One from Illinois, one from California. And there were 70 of us that met at a hotel at O'Hare in Chicago for the weekend to talk about putting such a conference together that was strictly for piano pedagogy.
Oh, wow.
Only. Well, we were all teaching pedagogy in our own.
Yeah.
And so.
That's incredible that they all get together.
Yeah. And that was the start of it. And
so how did it change from piano pedagogy to keyboard
well,
pedagogy?
we lost Richard. He died in December of 1999, so he never saw the turn of the century.
Oh.
Yeah. What a loss.
Yeah.
What a loss. He studied with Francis Clark. If you know that name.
Yeah. On New Jersey, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Richard, Lynn Freeman Olson, my co-author on the textbooks, all these people that were who's.
Yeah.
Studied with Francis Clark.
Well, it's incredible what you created because, it is like, it's every 2 years and it's like the place to go.
Yeah.
Like everybody goes.
Oh, yeah.
So, and it's focused on like piano, like your mom. It'd be focused on someone like your mom, right?
Right.
It's just huge. Right. It's not academic.
Yeah.
It's very applied.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. And NCKP was what came along to take the place of NCPP.
Okay. Oh, so it's a separate, or did they just change the name?
They just changed the name.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they just changed the name. And
do they do other keyboard stuff? Do they do like what would be the purpose of keyboard instead of piano? Do they do like harpsichord or?
Oh, it wouldn't surprise me if you had a thing on harpsichord or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like MTNA. Everybody thinks of MTNA as a piano thing.
Yeah.
Well,
it's not. Music teacher.
It's music teachers. Yeah, it's music teachers. Now, 80% of them happen to use the piano as their tool, like my mom did. But, and I constantly am saying to people in a workshop, remember, you're a music teacher.
Yeah.
Piano is your tool, but you're a music teacher. Don't forget to teach music.
Yeah. Yeah, we're dealing with some of that with our youngest daughter who plays violin and like trying to get like some of their performances. It's like all piano. I'm like, oh wait, violin? Oh, okay,
Yeah.
So
yeah. NCKP has really grown a lot.
Oh yeah,
which
it's
is
huge.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So lifetime achievement from that, and you were there at the start.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. That's amazing. And how did that all?
I was on the executive committee at the start.
So you'd fly into O'Hare and go to like the...
Well, it's just the executive committee put the conferences together, So, but Fran Larimer was on that executive committee. Well, and Jim and Richard and E.L. Lancaster and
Yeah.
names. It's kind of like when I was teaching in Glassboro, New Jersey. MENC at that time, MENC, which is now NAFME, had a group piano section of its conference.
Mm-hmm.
It was huge because all of us that taught group piano went both to MENC and MTNA.
Okay.
And we went to 2 national conferences. That's hard on the pocketbook.
Yeah.
But there was a panel that had been put together that was supposed to talk about the benefits of group piano instruction.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Fran Larimer, Joseph Resitz from Indiana, and the guy from the University of Maryland, and now I can't remember his name. That's horrible. And they were looking for a 4th person, but these 3 people that were on this panel were known world around,
Yeah.
Northwestern, Indiana, and Maryland. I mean, those are pretty big schools.
Yeah.
And I'm at Glassboro State University, 10,000 students total.
Yeah.
Anyway, they called Wurlitzer and said, we're looking for a younger group piano teacher that's really with it that will join us. And Lou said, she's not 50 miles from the conference because it was in Atlantic City.
Okay.
And Glassboro is 50 miles from the
You got a lot of mileage out of that Wurlitzer
Yeah.
gig.
Honey. That's what I say. I mean, my
Yeah.
career, my life.
Yeah.
I owe to them. Anyway, so I was on this panel and was terrified, but it went well, and it was an experience that I'll never forget. When it was over, they were off and run into something else, and I was packing up my stuff, and I turned around, and there was this guy walking towards me, and I remember the first thing I saw about him were his eyes, and they absolutely looked like they had something sparkling in them. And the closer he got, they were almost silver. I mean, it was really unusual.
Yeah.
Really unusual. And he walked up to me and he said, "Hi, I'm Lynn Freeman Olson, and I like the way you think." And I'm going, Lynn Freeman Olson? Because I had taught his music for years.
Yeah.
He likes the way I think. And I was just kind of...
It's like how my wife was the first time she met you.
Well, anyway, that started a relationship that,
Yeah.
went very hard and very fast until we lost him to cancer.
Oh.
And so he got me into a lot of things like the World of Piano that did workshops all over the country every summer.
That's what I saw. You've taught like in Fairbanks and like all over the place.
Yeah,
everywhere.
all kinds of places.
Yeah, yeah.
All kinds of places.
Yeah.
Oh, Fairbanks was the summer before Lynn died, 87, yeah. But, so he connected me a lot with the industry
Mm-hmm.
and asked me to do workshops with him. And I'm going, wow. And so we became co-curriculum directors of the International Pedagogy Workshop. That's Jerry Fishbach. He's a violinist. And they go all over the world. And Lynn and I were responsible for putting the curriculum together for the whole conference.
Wow.
Yeah. And that went on. I did it 3 years after Lynn died. And then I said, I can't do this anymore. Everywhere I look, there he is. I just can't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've had lots of help.
Yeah.
Getting places and getting to know people, and I every once in a while I'll get up in the morning and I'll look in the mirror and I'll say, "Martha, you can say no.
Yeah.
It's 2 letters."
It's not in your genetics. Your mom never said. I don't believe her that she had a waiting list. I think she accepted everybody.
Yeah, she did. She did.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she didn't lose them.
Yeah.
either. You know, they loved her. Oh my God, they adored her. When she died, you will not believe the amount of mail I got from her students. You know,
It's probably in the thousands,
oh,
right? I mean, because if you have 100 at a
so
time,
many,
right, and you do it for,
so
yeah,
many, and all of them would say something about how much they still love music. They're not doing anything with the piano. They're not doing anything, but they go to concerts all the time. They're doing,
which is important, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So as an audience member, right? I'm
right.
important too.
We
right?
would be nothing without y'all.
Yeah. So
Right.
how about your book and your curriculum you created? Like how did you, was that just an extension of your master's thesis? Or like how did you write the book and how did you get it so well known?
No, okay, all right. Well, what happened was in 1980, Lynn was contacted by Shermer Books, and they wanted him to write 2 books, one for music majors and one for non-music majors, that would be a college text for group piano. And he said, on one condition. And they said, name it. And he said, my co-author is Martha Hilley. And they said, who? And he said,
just call Willis, so they'll tell you about it. Yeah.
Anyway, he called me and he said, how would you feel about writing 2 books with me? And I said, are you kidding? I can't, and I'm just stuttering. And he said, Martha, Shermer Books wants us to write group piano books. And I said, they don't know me. And he said, they do now. And I said, I would love it. And a week later, I was in New York with Lynn and we were signing a contract with him.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, Clark Baxter was our editor. And Clark got an offer from West Publishing in St. Paul, Minnesota. West Publishing, at that time, was the leading publisher of law textbooks in the world.
Okay.
You would walk in a lawyer's office and you would see row after row after row, West Publishing.
Mm-hmm.
And they had never done anything in the arts. And they wanted to do this. And they contacted Clark and said, who do you know? And Clark said, funny. So he went with West and we went with Clark.
Okay.
Yeah. And the president of West Publishing, after we got started, first we did the music major. That was the first one to be finished.
Is that like the quintessential, like, is that
PDM.
what my wife would have,
that's
would have taught
piano
from?
Piano for the developing musician.
Yes. Yeah, I've even, yes.
Yeah. And Piano for Pleasure is the one for the non-music majors.
Okay.
Yeah. And the president of West called me when we started working really hard on Piano for Pleasure and said, so I always wanted to know how to play the piano. And I said, really? And he said, yeah. Could I learn with this book without you or Lynn? And I said, it's possible because of the tools that we were putting with it. And it came out with not only an instructor's manual that was a written book, actually, small, but it also came out with cassette tapes. And on these cassette tapes, you had non-pitch percussion play-along files, sound files.
So what does that mean? Like, so like a click track kind of?
No, it's like a live percussionist. His name is Rob Fedson. He was a graduate student here. And we hired him to do all of these percussion tracks.
Okay.
On every instrument you can imagine. That was non-pitch. And we did the non-pitch on purpose because...
Like non-pitch is like a snare drum, right? Or
well,
yeah.
Snare drums and all kinds of any kind of a drum set, would be.
Yeah.
But bongos and junk and everything. anyway, because we wanted it to be something that you could use even if you didn't have electronic pianos that were tuned to 440. If you wanted to, if your lab, lots of labs were acoustic pianos,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
you know, and so if the sound files that you wanted to put with it had some kind of pitch to them, what if you haven't tuned your pianos? Well, that's a disaster.
Yeah.
So, and we'd put percussion backgrounds behind everything.
Mm-hmm.
You name it. Not the classical music, but a lot of things. Anyway, and we had a narrator that narrated these percussion tracks. And it was a friend of Lynn's.
I can't envision this. Like, what do you mean by narrator?
Okay. He got all of the percussion tracks, and Lynn wrote a script for him and said, okay, this is what we would say here. Of course, now I do all of this myself.
Like, what would be said?
The sound file that you're about to hear works with items, blah, 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 on page whatever. It has a 2-bar introduction to it.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to this, everything. I'll send you one of the CDs.
Okay.
Yeah, and you'll hear it. Because like with this book.
My wife probably actually has one.
Oh, I'm sure she does.
Yeah. So
for Piano for Pleasure, every chapter starts, the first thing in every chapter is listening.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's nothing more important than listening.
Yeah.
So there are listening exercises that start every single chapter.
Are there any other method books that do that? I don't think I've ever heard of that.
I don't know. I don't think I've heard of one.
Yeah.
Could be.
You're right. It's probably the most important thing is to listen first.
So we do listening, and the first thing after listening is rhythm.
Okay.
Excuse me. I don't care how good you know the notes.
Yeah.
If you don't understand rhythm, you're dead. It's just not going to happen. And then there's technique, and then there's sight reading, and then there's theory, and then there's harmonization, and then there's transposition, and then there's improvisation, and then there's composition.
Oh, wow. Composition, really? Wow.
Well, that's the music major book, really.
Yeah.
It does all of that. But the non-major book does have little dabs of theory here and there. Not as much transposition, but we do improvisation, and we don't do composition.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then how did it take off to become like the book that class pianos use?
It was a hit for a long time.
Was that it just was the best thing out there? And
well, Lynn's name helped a lot. I mean, it really did. It really did. And we lucked out with West Publishing. They really marketed beautifully. When West Publishing decided that they would sell, they had built up a college textbook library. Ours was the first.
Mm-hmm.
And they sold all of those to International Thompson Group.
Okay.
Which owned several publishing companies. And West Publishing went back to just straight law books. And we hated that.
Yeah, because you don't get the personalized attention, right? That's just
well, we did because we kept our editor.
Oh, okay.
Our editor went with our books.
Okay.
Yeah. And so we were with him, and then when International Thompson decided they were getting out of higher ed and into corporate education,
okay,
they sold all of us to Cengage Publishing. Cengage.
I don't think I've heard of it.
That was the disaster.
Oh, it was a disaster.
Well, they filed Chapter 11.
Oh, yeah. It's a hard time in just textbooks in general.
Yeah, it is. It is. And, you know, I don't care how much you say about copyright. I have had students in my piano class walk in my room and I'm teaching them out of my book that Lynn and I wrote, and this kid puts photocopies on the music rack. And I'm saying, do you know that's illegal?
Yeah.
Well, no, they said they're out of books. And I said, and that's when you come to your teacher and say, the bookstore is out of books. Do you have one I can borrow? And I will say, of course I do.
Yeah.
And I picked it
Yeah.
up
It's
and
a shame.
ripped it into shreds and
wow.
put it in the trash can, just to make a point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, now though, a lot of professors, they'll photocopy the book
Oh, I know.
and they'll put the PDF on Canvas, and it's just like, it just hurts the industry because
Yeah, it does.
it's
Well,
so
so
much
many
work.
publishers have gone out of business.
Yeah.
So many have gone out of business. Well, Cengage pulled Piano for Pleasure. They quit publishing it. Did not say one word to me. And one of
That's
my
nice.
grad assistants called me one day and said, Hilley, why did you take Piano for Pleasure out of print? And I said, Piano for Pleasure is not out of print. And he said, that's what Cengage told my bookstore. And I said, let me call, and I'll call you back. So I called. My person was, when Cengage filed Chapter 11, they fired all of their upper level editors, that were making six figures.
Yeah.
They're gone. So Clark was gone, retired. Anyway, Xavier answered, and I said, it's Martha. He said, hey, how you doing, honey? And I said, not too great.
Yeah.
And he said, what's wrong? And I said, did you feel it wasn't necessary for you to say anything to me about taking Piano for Pleasure out of print? And he said, Piano for Pleasure is not out of print. And I said, I'll give you 10 minutes. And I hung up. And about 5 minutes later, he called me back and he said, I am so sorry. I had no idea.
They didn't even tell him. Yeah.
And I said, well, I want the copyright back. And he said, oh, they don't do that. And I said, then you might tell your legal eagles that I'm going to sue Cengage, because there's nothing in my contract that says they can do this.
Yeah.
And he said, let me talk to legal. And so he called me back in a week and he said, they're not going to budge. And I said, well, I hate it because you're going to be in the lawsuit too. And he said, let me try again. Well, I did get the copyright back.
Okay.
And I'm redoing.
Just for the pleasure book, right?
Yeah, just for the pleasure book. Anyway, so that's I'm redoing Piano for Pleasure. And its new market is older adults who are beginning students.
There's a lot of
that
them.
have never played.
It's shocking how many people. And there's something about the piano.
Yeah.
Well, and the guitar.
Yeah.
Piano, guitar. It's like you'll never hear like a 65-year-old say, I want to learn cello. I mean, I'm sure it happens.
I
but
told all of them when I started this class, started the studio in my house, that they're my guinea pigs. I'm going to be trying things out on them.
Yeah.
Because I'm redoing this book. And I said, you've got to give me your honest opinion about things. Well, at that very same class, one of my students, Mike Harkins, he's great. He said, so Martha, I think in this Amazing Grace thing that we just learned up on the Black Keys, I think it would be easier if we just reached over with our fifth finger and played that other black key rather than crossing our hand over. And I said, really? And he said, yeah, I know you said to us, well, you look more like a pianist if you cross your hand over.
Is that what you said?
He said, but it's easier with the fifth finger. I said, okay, everybody, we're going to do this and we're going to do it Mike's way. And let's see what you think. And so, hey, he's right. So that now says, arranged Martha Hilley edited Mike Harkins.
No, for that one thing?
Uh-huh. So anything they suggest to me that the class adopts, their name goes next to it.
Oh, wow.
But in PDM, you'll see a lot of the examples that they do of sight reading and transposing and all of this stuff. It's only 4 to 8 measures.
Okay.
You know, because if you can do 4 measures of it, you can do all of it.
Yeah.
You know.
Mm-hmm.
And students get tired of going through pages and pages. But 4 measures, yeah, they can do it. And so the compositions that they're doing in class pertain to things they're studying. And we have best in show performances. In other words, everybody has to play what they've composed. And their classmates vote on who they like the best. They rank every one of them.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And whoever makes best in show in that particular day gets either put on the website, or if there's a new edition coming up, they get in the new edition and they're a published composer.
Wow.
And they thought
that's a pretty cool class.
Yeah, they thought that was pretty good. So, and some really wonderful things that these kids come up with. I mean, wonderful things. When we study theme and variations, that happened around Christmas time. And so we would take Christmas carols and do the first 8 bars. You know, they had to arrange the first 8 bars.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had to do 2 variations on those first 8 bars. Unbelievable stuff came up.
And probably some bad stuff.
Well, yeah.
Yeah,
some bad stuff. But it's...
that's so interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
You know, that's it. You got to keep their interest.
Yeah. So is it different teaching 60-year-old? Because you have to be 60 right now.
Oh, yeah. You have to be 60 or older.
Because before, I remember we had dinner and you told me, I only teach 60 and up. And I misheard it. I thought you said 6 and up. My wife's like, no, 60 and up.
60 and up. 60 and up, yeah.
Do you think that's like a big market?
It's a huge market.
Yeah.
It's a huge market. And you know what? They practice.
Yeah. Well, because they want to be there.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not saying the kids don't, but...
And they all come in saying, I've never played the piano. I know I probably won't be able to do this, but I got to give it a try.
Yeah.
And now they've been with me a year and a half, and they are amazed at what they can do.
Wow. That's so cool.
Oh, it is.
That's so cool.
It is. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
I can hardly wait for Mondays and Thursdays. So.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for sitting down with us.
Bet.
This is just wonderful. So, a true legend of the pre-Butler. Were you here back when it was in the old building?
No.
Okay. I don't know when it switched over.
No, they had been in this building a year when I came in 82.
Wow. Okay.
82. Yeah.
So when you came here, it was like brand new.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So you've seen.
Maybe this opened in 80. But anyway, it was a new building.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you so much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nathan.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.